Number 1. At around 3 AM one night, I was running around my neighborhood with my middle school friends. We were fucking around outside when we heard a cop car come flying up with its lights on. We dove into some woods to hide, and the cop car slowed down, put on its searchlight, and scanned the woods. We stood stone still, the four of us, until the cop car passed. Then, all of a sudden, one of my friends sprints between us deeper into the woods. What the fuck? We start whispering to each other, trying to figure out who had just run off. We walk out of the woods and realize that we're all there. Someone else had been hiding in those woods with us. Number 2. I lived in Menifee, California for about over 3 years. During that time, I went to the local high school, and let me just say that a lot of crazy stuff went down while I attended. One time, a library employee showed up to school very early in the morning and shot herself in her car. The body was discovered during second period. What creeps me out most of all was that I passed by her car while I was walking to school that morning and didn't even notice it. Another time, an undercover cop posing as a student was able to identify kids that were selling narcotics, and shortly after, a huge drug bust ensued. Strangely enough, on the same day that happened while I was walking to school, some guy I knew asked if I wanted to buy pot off him, which I wisely declined. Later on, I saw that same guy get arrested and escorted out of my classroom. If you've ever seen 21 Jump Street, the event itself closely mirrored that. Pretty awesome. However, the one event that was probably the biggest and shook the entire community was the disappearance and death of a local boy named Terry Dwayne Smith Jr. The tragedy happened during the summer after the 2013 school year. I didn't know who the boy was, but I did know his older brother, Skylar. I knew Skylar from school. He was in my first period English class at the time. I didn't talk to him much, even though he sat near me, but on the times that I did say a word to him, he was friendly. He came off as a little bit odd, but I personally didn't think he was really that strange. He had his own group of friends who were really easy to get along with. Something of note that did happen early on in the school year was a confrontation he got in. I remember hearing about how this one guy said something offensive to Skylar, which in turn greatly angered him, and it all erupted into a fight. The kid's front tooth got knocked out. At the time, it seemed funny to everyone else, but it was an indicator of how far Skylar was willing to go when it came to getting agitated. Anyways, on to the main story. After school ended that year, I spent most of the summer just hanging out with my trio of friends. One day, I was in my room doing nothing of interest, so I decided to go on Facebook. While on there, Skylar posted something that appeared on my newsfeed. He said his little brother had gone missing and was urging his friends to be on the lookout for his whereabouts. I found it pretty unfortunate, but thought the kid would probably be found the same day. Either that day or the next, I forget which, I happened to be watching the news, and the number one topic was the disappearance of a boy named Terry. A picture of him was then put up. On closer examination, I noticed he was the same boy that Skylar had posted about earlier. Apparently, the situation had gotten dire, and the brother's mother, Shauna, had called for a group effort to go and search for the boy. As the days went on, more and more people went out in search of young Terry. I believe Skylar made a few more posts about it, but I could be wrong. Eventually, he was made a suspect and was taken into custody by the police because he was the last person to see Terry alive before he went missing. I remember hearing about how a lot of his friends were in denial and disbelief. To them, he could never do such a thing. Since I personally didn't know Skylar that well, I couldn't really pass judgment at the time. While in custody, Skylar changed his story several times about his last encounter with his brother, his main one being that they were both home alone, and he decided to leave and go and hang out with his friends, and that supposedly Terry had followed him for a while, until Skylar told him he couldn't tag along and ordered him to return home. This set up his theory that Terry was probably abducted by someone that night. Finally, after several days of searching, Terry's body was eventually discovered behind the family home, under a tree in a shallow grave. The general consensus at the time was that Skylar did kill his brother for unknown reasons and tried to bury him. Some even thought that the mother was in on it because she was still in defense of Skylar, who was then charged with the crime. Shauna acted pretty strangely, saying that Terry had autism and that supposedly at first she didn't let the cops investigate her property. After the corpse was discovered, the huge search party was promptly called off and a candlelight vigil was held for Terry. In the aftermath, a lot of drama ensued. Terry's father came into town from the other side of the country and claimed that his ex-wife had lied about their son having autism and demanded to take his body back with him to be buried in his local area. He even sued Shauna for a large amount of money. I think it was for child negligence or for emotional distress. The two even appeared and debated on the Dr. Phil show, but nothing came out of that besides what everyone already knew. Since at the time Skylar was a minor, he wasn't charged as an adult. He was found guilty of manslaughter, but was offered a plea deal, the details of which have not been released to the public. Apparently, what actually happened was that the brothers were roughhousing when Terry was accidentally killed. Their mother later suggested something like the boy hitting his head on the corner of a table. In a panic, Skylar tried to bury him in the backyard. What was strange was that knowing what had happened, Skylar still went to Facebook and asked for help in searching for his brother instead of just confessing. Skylar was sentenced to 12 years and will still be in juvenile detention until he's 23. Overall, this was pretty tragic, and it's crazy how one day I was just talking to this guy in class, and the next he's on the news for his own brother's murder. Links to the case can be found in the description below. Number 3. I was driving home late one night, somewhere between 1 and 3 AM. The road I was driving goes through the back end of a couple of counties in the deep south. Nothing around but forests, fields, and the occasional group of shacks huddling under a light, only barely keeping the night away. I'd driven this stretch of road many times before, even at this time of night, so it wasn't really a big deal. Just a long trip is all. Since there was rarely any traffic that time of night, I was able to turn the stereo up and push the pedal down. And then I came to this bridge. Nothing really noteworthy about it. It's not ancient, or a covered bridge, or all that spooky at all. Just a concrete span over swampland, trees growing right up near the edge, and turning the road into a dim trail at the bottom of a dark canyon. I'd been over this bridge many times before, and like I said, aside from being fairly long, it wasn't really noteworthy. That is, until that night. It was humid out, and as the temperature dropped, there was a little bit of fog. Not enough to really slow me down, but I had to turn on the high beams. So I'm shooting across the bridge, and it hits me that it seems to be taking longer than normal to cross. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. When I thought I was finally getting to the end of it, I saw a figure walking on the opposite side of the road. At first, no big deal, right? Guy walking in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. Probably lives nearby. Probably drunk. I keep an eye on them to make sure they don't fall in front of the car, but my mind is already racing. I mean, this is the middle of nowhere. There are no houses around. There are no lights but the stars and my headlights stabbing out into the darkness. And as I whiz by, going way too fast for my own good, I noticed two things. First, the figure is wearing what appears to be a straitjacket, the sleeves undone, and the straps trailing the ground. Glaring white against the background of the night, there was no mistaking it. A straitjacket, hands covered, straps dangling and waving as he walked. Second, it has no face. Not like there's no head there. There's a head shape and the place where a face should be, but no face. Just an expanse of darkness that I took to be his skin. I chalked it up to going really fast, contrast between the white jacket and the dark skin at night, and just plain creepy thoughts. I mean, surely I couldn't have just seen that. I tried to spot him in the rearview mirror, but it was so dark there was nothing to be seen. I slowed down a little, and was suddenly off the end of the bridge, and on normal 2-lane blacktop again. I briefly considered turning around, seeing what it was. Surely it was just a trick of the light, or my mind playing tricks on me, right? But I still remember my heart pounding, and the fear I felt as I sped on through the darkness, driving home. Number 4. I worked for a large rental property company. A man called one of our properties and asked if they had any units available on a high floor. This was a high-rise in a great location, where the upper floors had a nice view of the city, so the request wasn't unusual. The man came to view the unit, and a leasing agent took him on the tour. She opened up the balcony to show him the view, and then she went back into the unit, expecting him to follow. When he didn't, she turned around, and he was gone. He had jumped from the balcony onto the road below. The unit was on something like the 20th floor. Number 5. When I was around 14 or 15, a few of my friends and I decided to go and mess around in an abandoned hospital in our town. We always did this kind of thing. There were a bunch of abandoned warehouses that we would frequent to do the usual, namely smash and break things, take pictures, etc. It was just a pretty arbitrary decision to go to the hospital. There was nothing in particular that made us want to go there, and no one could have known we were going there. So, as we all climbed through the small window at the back, we stood in a small room that led out into the main hallway, with the old reception desk and stairs. Normally, people would start exploring out of curiosity before we all made it inside, but this time, everyone was in the same room. Where there was usually an open doorway, a big piece of wood was blocking the door with no handle. It confused us slightly, because we were certain it wasn't there before. After a few seconds of pushing and trying to knock it over, a voice booms from behind the door. "Get out." The voice sounded like it came from the earth itself, and had such a horrible sound to it, my bones practically broke themselves trying to escape my skin. Literally, I've never seen good friends push each other out of the way for their own safety before, but we all manically scrambled out of the small window, not caring who we pushed aside. Looking back, it seems pretty obvious it was some homeless person, but that's easily the most creeped out I've ever been. Hey guys, Lazy here, and thank you very much for listening. So a relatively short video I suppose, but either way I hope you enjoyed it, and coming up next will be the Q&A video that I promised a little while back now. Again, a very special thanks to Anthony Salinas for the thumbnail for this video. He's a major talent, so make sure to check him out down below in the description. Not much more to add this time, other than smash that like button or I'll smash you, and I'll be back again with some more scary stories very soon. Until then guys, stay spooky. And remember, the best things happen in the dark.